It's an alarming trend. 400 acts of vandalism, arson, and violence against churches and houses of worship just last year alone. We've seen Catholic sanctuaries desecrated, statues destroyed, bomb threats, even shootings. She is the Assistant Attorney General of Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice and has led investigations and prosecutions to protect religious freedom for people of all faiths in the United States. Welcome back to the program, Harmeet Dhillon. Harmeet, thank you for being here. The Family Research Council identified 415 hostile incidents in 2024 against a total of something like nearly 400 churches. Vandalism, arson, gun-related incidents, bomb threats, that's down slightly from 485 the year before. But when you look at 2018, there were only 50 incidents of this type. What do you make of this dramatic surge? What do you think is driving this?
Well, thanks for having me, Raymond. It is very concerning to see this rise in violence against people of faith, but I also think we're seeing more awareness of it. And I think that in part, people are reporting these incidents more, at least to the federal government, because they see that we're actually doing something about them. So I would say that this Department of Justice, and particularly the Civil Rights Division, is probably the most proactive in terms of protecting people of faith and houses of worship compared to any in United States history. And so just so far, in less than a year in office, I prosecuted numerous incidents of attacks on churches and synagogues and houses of worship in general, but we've also had civil cases involving these kinds of attacks. We have many open investigations as well. And we've seen many plea agreements and convictions in a Mormon church attack recently. There was an arson attack on a synagogue in Mississippi. We've convicted a guy who left backpacks in churches in Colorado, Arizona, and California. We convicted a Kentucky man for attacking and decapitating a statue of the Virgin Mary, and many other cases like this. And so you've seen, of course, the news about the obstruction of the city's church in Minnesota, and at least one of the individuals in that case has been accused of interfering with other religious observances of Christians here in the Capitol. So we're on this. It's one of our top priorities here at the DOJ.
I want to talk about that case of that Florida teenager recently. He had a plot to attack a church and was discovered before he carried it out. Investigators linked the teen to a neo-Nazi satanic group. Harmeet, without jeopardizing any ongoing investigations, what have you discovered in the DOJ's investigation so far that is fueling this? What's the primary thing fueling these religious attacks? Is it social media? Is it the conflagration of politics overlaid on top of people of faith, and they think this is somehow a political protest?
Well, I don't have the answers to all of that, but some patterns that I can see, just as anybody can observe with their own eyes. For one thing, we've seen an increase in violence by young people who are identifying as transgender. I think there are some questions about what's the cause and what's the effect there. Are they alienated, and then do they become transgender and also become violent? Are the drugs a factor? I'm not here to opine on the root causes, but I do see some patterns like that. I also see a rise in anti-Semitism generally on campuses and against synagogues, and I think some of that may be fueled from foreign sources and organized efforts to destabilize. And then in terms of the Christian rise of violence against houses of worship and other incidents of that nature, generally speaking, I think our society is becoming more secular. I don't think people who regularly go to church are, showing up and saying, hands up, don't shoot, and who shut this down? We shut this down. I mean, that's generally not something that people of faith are doing. So I think that is part of it as well. And I think we would all behoove ourselves to return to some of our roots on which this country was founded, including religious liberty and belief in God.
Yeah. Harmeet, Don Lemon, the independent journalist fired by CNN in 2023, he had been documenting that Minnesota chaos following the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Nicole Good. And last month, as you well know, he entered that city's church in St. Paul, along with anti-ICE agitators. He began filming, telling viewers that, quote, the freedom to protest is what the First Amendment is all about. Harmeet, I know you're investigating potential criminal violations of a federal law in this case. It's notable that the anti-ICE agitators are now claiming they're journalists to protect against prosecution. Is everybody a journalist now?
Well, in a way, everybody can be a journalist. I suppose we're all journalists on X if we're posting and we're uncovering things and we're just being empirical about it. But I think the important thing for your viewers to understand is one, first of all, we've arrested 9 people so far. A third of them claim to be journalists and are identified as such by Nikema Armstrong, the lawyer who organized this this attack on this church. And I'm not even counting the person who drove Don Lemon or his camera guy as journalists. But if you add those, then more than half of them are claiming to be journalists.
Does the free speech right obliterate the other right to free worship?
No, and that was my bigger point is journalists commit crimes as well. It's not a shield against prosecution that you are wearing a journalism badge or you're taking it on and putting it off. I mean, notably, when you look at the video that Don Lemon himself put out there, he outside the church, he has a big stick mic and he's putting it, he's interviewing his co-conspirators or his alleged co-conspirators. He then he puts on a disguise, if you will. He puts on a hoodie, takes off that microphone, puts on a small lapel mic and with a lav, and he's like, he doesn't want to alert them because he's so famous, of course, that if he goes in as Don Lemon journalist, that's going to completely change the character of this event. So he goes in disguise, if you will, and then springs it on them inside. I don't know. The jury is eventually going to decide whether that protects you against the federal civil rights allegations in this case, including but not limited to the Klan Act and the FACE Act. But, in prior incidents, the United States Department of Justice has prosecuted people who claim to be journalists, or even let's call them podcasters of the nature of Don Lemon today, in multiple incidents, and including anti-abortion protests and what have you. If calling yourself a journalist is a shield to federal criminal liability, then everyone is going to call themselves a journalist, and then we have to get into semantics of what that is. I'm not getting into that. I don't think it matters. You could be a journalist, but if you cross the line, you'll pay for the crime.
Yeah, well, at the heart of this case is the FACE Act. Explain to people what that is and how the Biden Department of Justice sort of weaponized that FACE Act.
The FACE Act was passed in 1994. It's Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. And that's the main purpose of it originally was to protect abortion clinics from mainly Christian protesters. And to get it to pass, the sponsors of this legislation added in a provision that also protects houses of worship from similar types of obstruction and attack. And it's never been used for that until this administration, because mainly it's been weaponized by Democrat administrations against Christian pro-life protesters. Now, during the Biden administration, they actually went after many of these people, and not only with the FACE Act, which your initial violation of which is a misdemeanor, so fairly minor punishment, but when you add a conspiracy charge to that, it can become a felony. And so if you have 2 or more people praying outside a abortion clinic and they are alleged to have blocked the entrance or intimidated women seeking abortions, then they were prosecuted and given some very heavy penalties, years in prison. Now, the Biden DOJ did also go after a handful of protesters after the Dobbs decision came out, and they were crisis pregnancy centers. So there was one case like that, Oropesa versus United States. And similarly, the pro-abortion protesters, in that case, Jane's Revenge, were prosecuted. And they were also prosecuted under the Klan Act, the conspiracy statute. And I actually defended that conviction. And we won that in the 11th Circuit. And so that is the law. You can use the FACE Act and you can apply conspiracy enhancements. And you can convict someone of a felony for doing this no one ever did it vis-a-vis houses of worship. But I will also say we didn't see a lot of so-called protesters invading churches until the recent vogue about ICE. Thank goodness. I mean, even that was off limits to the wacky left until this last year. And now suddenly I'm very concerned. And one reason we moved very quickly in this case is, first of all, we don't want to see people of faith being deterred from going to church by this type of nearly, it's quite very alarming activity, particularly in an area where there was a fatal shooting incident in a Catholic church in Minneapolis just a few months ago. And so people thought they were under attack. And then secondly, if this becomes acceptable in the United States, we are going to see neo-Nazis doing this in synagogues. We're going to see anti-Muslim protesters doing this in mosques and so forth. And this is just un-American and antithetical to what we believe in as a country. Yeah. It's also against some state laws as well. And so, we're pleased to see that state prosecutors are also going after some of these offenses as well.
Well, look, I know you can't comment on ongoing investigations, but I have to mention this. I know our viewers are very concerned about it. In early February, Holy Innocents Catholic Church and School in Long Beach, California was desecrated. Statues smashed, images of Virgin Mary destroyed, the tabernacle was cracked open, chapel vandalized. This incident, along with what we're seeing in Minnesota and other parts of the country, I think do deeply worry people. What can you tell us about the priorities of the DOJ in prosecuting these cases? And is the message being conveyed that you all are on the case?
Well, I think the Don Lemon arrest, from both sides got certainly days of attention. I think it's a very high priority of ours. From day one, I'm certainly, as you know, from before I took this job on, a lawyer who has made the protection of people of faith a central part of my law practice for over 3 decades now. And so it's very important to me, it's very important to the Attorney General, and it's very important to our president. So no one has told me anything other than pedal to the metal on this. We have a team of prosecutors dedicated to these FACE Act investigations and cases. We have dedicated law enforcement who work with us, United States Attorney's offices we coordinate with regularly. We have put some people away in the last several months who attacked houses of worship and attacked people of faith on the streets of different cities. And so I don't think there's a higher priority. And if we lose our ability to peacefully go to our house of worship on a Saturday, Sunday, or whatever day you pray, or feel like our sanctuaries are not safe, people will stop going to church, which would be it was something I fought against and won 3 cases at the United States Supreme Court between myself and others working with my nonprofit at that time, that the relegation of faith to like some optional thing that you can be forced to do by Zoom was deeply offensive to me and many people of faith in this country. We fought against that all the way to the Supreme Court. And this Supreme Court has now put faith back in its rightful place in the pantheon of First Amendment rights where it belongs, which is equal, if not superior, to all of those.
Yeah. Harmeet, are you getting support from the faith leaders, the Catholic bishops, the evangelical church, or are they sort of sitting this one out, even though all of these cases affect them, and frankly, it puts them in the target here?
Well, look, I get a pat on the back whenever I encounter them, but most of the time I'm not running around seeking kudos. We are out there doing our jobs. I've spent many weekends flying to different cities to make sure that we tour synagogues or other places of worship where they've been attacked on their days that they congregate, so that the congregation sees that the United States Department of Justice is a partner of theirs. I speak regularly. Earlier this week, I spoke at George Washington University's conference on extremism, which was focusing this year on anti-Semitism. And we are just really out there making sure that everyone knows. I've got several speeches lined up in front of different denominations of Christian groups. I speak regularly to pastors. I meet with any person of faith or faith leader who wants to come here and meet with us in the Department of Justice to hear their concerns. And their concerns are not just the obvious ones that have been raised here, but people who are imprisoned also have rights. And so if anybody's in a prison facility and they're not being allowed to pray in their faith, within reason, of course, and consistent with carceral priorities, we step in and we inquire and we make sure that they're taken care of. When women are being forced to disrobe in front of men in these prisons, I mean, that's another faith issue. Teenagers are also entitled to their faith beliefs being protected. So in Loudoun County, Virginia, we've stepped in to side with two boys who have raised religious objections to a girl coming into their locker room and invading their privacy. And boys have rights too. So anywhere we see violations of faith that we believe are protected by federal law, we step in, we open investigations, and if necessary, we seek convictions or civil penalties.
Yeah. Well, Harmeet, I hope this moment has clarified for a lot of leaders, Catholic leaders and otherwise, to support you in this. I think it's important for the faith community to say, wait a minute, we all need to also support the vigorous prosecutions and investigations that this Department of Justice and this Civil Rights Division is willing to enact on our behalf. And I don't hear enough of that, and maybe that has to be, you all need that support, I think, just to activate the people in the pews so they realize what's at stake and what you're doing. Harmeet Dhillon, I thank you for your time, your clarity, and your work, and we'll check in with you soon.
Thanks a lot, Raymond. Take care.